and hopefully we'll get clear.
Sounds good. And I started the recording.
All right, sounds good. It is 6:07 on August 12th, and I'm going to call this meeting or this workshop of the CCAC to order. It looks like we do, in fact, have quorum, although we're not voting, so that's slightly less relevant. So second item on our agenda is a discussion of the agenda itself. And I had one item that I wanted to suggest adding and get everybody's feedback on, and that is that later this month, August 30th, the Joint Policy Board is having their meeting, and we are giving an update about CCAC. So at the end of this meeting, after we've had a chance to discuss everything on the agenda, I wanted to get your all's feedback on what you would like to update the Joint Policy Board on. So that would be an item to add just before public comments, to see what message you want me to bring to the Joint Policy Board, statements to make, questions to ask, that sort of thing. Are we amenable to adding that? Yeah. Oh. Yeah. All right. Cool. So with that, anybody else have any discussion on the agenda, changes you'd like to make or items to discuss?
No, but Stephen is here. Can you add him as a panelist?
Okay. Thanks for monitoring the chat.
Yes.
All right, good. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, glad to be here.
You're not the only one who couldn't get the link, so don't worry.
Okay.
All right, so we are on to agenda item. I'll just to fill you in, Stephen, we added an item to the agenda at the very end, right before public comments, to discuss what we want to bring to as an update to the Joint Policy Board on August 30th. So we're keeping the agenda the same, but adding that item.
Okay.
All right. So any discussion of the minutes from last month's meeting? Jennison.
Hi, I actually had a question about, or an addition to tonight's agenda. I'm not sure where it fits exactly, but it's about process protocol for inviting speakers. I had on my task list to invite CWC and Nkwanda Jah to present, and I just think it would be helpful for us as a group to discuss like that protocol and timing, if the upcoming meeting doesn't work, kind of, can we have a set schedule for the coming year, basically lined up where we can see who's been invited and planning to attend, just organizationally. That would be helpful.
Sounds good. What do you say to adding that to number 5? We have to have a discussion of in-person meetings. Like before everything hit the fan with Delta, we had talked about going back to in-person on September. So that item is to discuss how folks feel about that, but we can also kind of discuss the process of the meetings in general and how we want to invite people and schedule.
Sounds like a good idea.
I have a question about that. Since there will be new committee members at the next meeting, is that something that maybe should be discussed then so they can be part of that discussion? Not that, I'm opposed to doing it this evening, just thinking about since new people will be onboarding in September.
That makes sense. We could compromise by having a conversation for those who are here now and get our feel for it and kind of see where the continuing members of the committee stand, and then not necessarily make a firm decision, but then at the next meeting revisit and see where the newer members are. Yeah, I don't know, does that, that could be potentially redundant, but I do think, to Jennison's point, like we want to kind of discuss some aspects of our meetings in general. So that's a good point.
Yeah, we can definitely go over at least the just protocol for inviting speakers.
Okay.
And if that gets repeated next month, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. All right, cool. I guess, is there anything else on that topic? Nope. All right, so then item number 4 is our staff updates. Forrest, you and Heather are up.
Sure. I'll just start off, like I said in the email, just really giving an update for a lot of those action items from the last meeting. If I miss anything, please let me know. Obviously, I was not at the last meeting, so there may be gaps. We've been working on putting together a flyer just for the CCAC for outreach events. So please send any kind of suggestions for language, images, things like that. Same for locations or events. We need as much help as we can from you all getting those events on our calendars and start putting them on staff's radar. Two events that we do have possibly before you, if you all are interested, is the SWAG event, the Southwest Area Gainesville event that was in the email from the 5th. And then also the Parks and Rec and Cultural Affairs and Forestry are doing a, I forget the phrase, Lily, but an event at Morningside.
Giveaway for our belated Arbor Day celebration.
There we go. Also send suggestions for people in the community and business owners or organizations that are involved in solar. We want to start putting together that group of people to begin those conversations at the CCAC in September, but also start really putting that together for the bigger conversation that's going to happen with the Joint Policy Board, since that your advice is what they've asked for on solar policy. And I imagine we'll talk a little bit more about that later on tonight too. The vacancies for the new members, for the 3 new members, they're closed. I sent you all the applications. The only change to that is that David Hastings has withdrawn his name. He still wants to stay involved and will likely stay involved and join for more meetings, but has asked to not be in consideration for that. So you guys all have that information now, and that is what is going to be sent to the Joint Policy Board, and yeah, has been sent to the other groups and organizations on the CCAC distribution list. And my last one, as you guys all saw in the email, this is my last meeting as the county liaison for the CCAC. So I just wanted to thank all of you for the time and for the experience. You know, obviously COVID has made this extra weird, but it's been a good experience no matter what. And I really appreciate the time that you all have given me and the things that I've learned from you all. I won't be going far. I'm going over to the city and being a planner in their sustainable development department. So I'll still be involved. I'll still be around. I'm a Gainesville native. Apparently I can't get out of here and don't really want to. So you all will see me more.
Thank you, Forrest. And thank you for all the work that you've done for us also.
I appreciate it. It has been, this has been, you know, I don't leave for any other reason, really, that the city opportunity is a great opportunity. I really enjoyed working for EPD, and it is and has been a dream job for me. And in that way, I'm definitely sad to move somewhere else, but it makes it a little bit easier knowing I'm still going to keep working with a lot of the same people on a lot of the same problems.
Awesome. Well, we're glad we're not actually losing you.
Thanks.
Lily? Oh wait, was there something else?
That or Heather, I don't know if I got everything. Really, you guys are going to be left in great hands. Heather and Stacy are going to take up where I am leaving. So really you get certainly 2 incredibly capable people where, you know, you had just me before.
So it's like BOGO. We get BOGO liaisons?
Yes.
All right. Heather, you have anything to add?
Just that we're moving forward with the energy efficiency and affordable housing. That's going to the board on August 24th with staff recommendations. And we're moving forward with the greenhouse gas inventory. We've gotten one proposal and we're reviewing that now.
Awesome.
Yes, and also forgot to add that we are moving forward with the stakeholder engagement piece of the vulnerability analysis. So staff has started crafting more language in that RFP based off of a lot of the feedback that you guys gave us. But if there's more feedback or if there's more discussion on that you all would like to have, please get it to us because we want to get that refined and sent to Jones Edmonds, next week.
Can you send us what you have so far, just so we have a chance to look at it and know where you guys are right now?
Yes, I can. Heather, you have that copy also?
I can pull it up.
You want to go ahead and start that thread just in case, so emails don't go back to me, that will be a dead.
Yeah, I can start that one.
Thank you. How have you guys been able to send out, well, I guess maybe the rest of the community doesn't know. So over the last 2 or 3 weeks, that big spreadsheet of climate exposures or vulnerabilities that I put together months ago, I turned that into, we'll call it a survey, but it's really just a prettier version of the big spreadsheet, and asked Forrest and Lily and Robert at GRU to please send that out to the relevant staff members, with the goal being to find out information about any current or planned initiatives that might relate to those exposures. So the idea is to inventory what we already have going on right now, so that as we move forward with the climate action planning process, we're not reinventing the wheel, and we might also hopefully see opportunities to build on existing initiatives, to find some synergies where we can draw existing or planned projects together or build on them to make them more effective. So do you all, I guess Forrest or Heather or Lily, are there any updates on that? I know that that only happened a week or 2 ago. So
yeah, we have our regular county planning staff group meeting next week, and we'll have more feedback and information on that after that meeting.
okay.
Yeah, I also sent it out. We've gotten a handful of responses so far from different departments, and I have 2 more promising me responses early next week. So we'll also be, I'll also be bringing that to the meeting.
Great, thank you. So Forrest and Heather, you guys have anything else, or should we toss it over to Lily?
That's it for me.
All right, Lily, you're up.
I don't really have any other updates. Forrest seemed to cover it. If you guys are interested in doing any of the outreach at our tree giveaway event, just try to let me know as soon as possible within the next couple weeks, because I'm already working with park staff to get help for setup and whatnot, so we can make sure we have a table and everything ready for you. And it's September 24th at Morningside from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
All right. So that kind of brings up like our participation in these events. It was a question that I know I've been wondering about. Stephen asked about this in his email that came through Forrest, and I imagine that maybe some of the rest of you are wondering this too. Basically, like, what is our role? What role do we want to play? What role should we be playing in both the climate action planning process as well as in these sorts of engagement opportunities? So what are we hoping to get out of it for CCAC, and what benefit are we hoping to bring to the community? In terms of the bigger picture, but also in terms of how we're actually able to participate, because I mean, Forrest mentioned this in an email, like there can't be 2 of us at the same time. So it has to be one person sitting by themselves, at the table. So I would love to hear your all's thoughts on that, on the sort of the bigger picture of the role that we want to play and how these sorts of engagement opportunities might fit in. Stephen.
Thank you. I think we need to pick our battles. The response from the general manager confirms my belief, and it's just my opinion, that there's an institutional and cultural issue related to the kind of changes that I would hope to see in terms of greenhouse gas reductions at GRU. The way I see that is that there are many other options besides the ones that he listed. And the idea that solar is unreliable, well, it's just simply false. And it can be implemented at the neighborhood scale. So as I mentioned in my email, I really think we should just walk away from it. I think we need to spend our time on adaptation scenarios. I think we need to spend our time, and I know others have already gone there before me, so I apologize for focusing on mitigation, but I think we should give it up, frankly. I think the mitigation efforts that we can make probably shouldn't have anything to do with the big institutions of the University of Florida and GRU. So that's just my perspective on it. And I can appreciate that maybe most of you disagree with that, and I respect that. I'm sorry to be so cranky, but I really do think that it was worth a shot, but I just don't think that there's any way that we're going to move GRU any direction at all. The only people that have the power to do that is the city commission, and I'd rather doubt that they will take that action. So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Stephen. And we're going to come back to that topic. I was going to kind of loop what you said specifically with regard to GRU into the conversation on item 6, where we talk like specifically about the GRU response, because I think that this is an important issue that we do need to talk about and hash out. I kind of, on this particular item, I'm going to circle back to these sorts of engagement opportunities like the swag event and the Arbor Day event. Does anybody have thoughts on how or whether we should be participating in those? John?
Yes, I think that anytime we can get some public appearance, one of the objectives that we have in our communication is to identify leaders in the community and leaders that will come out to public events like this. We can use these events to get contacts that will lead us to larger groups that we can work with and get their input. So I think anytime we can do public appearances, one of the benefits would be to identify public contacts or group contacts that will help us to get our message out.
Thank you, John. I'm seeing some other heads nod. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, from the staff side, I think that that's what we were thinking. We could have staff, a staff representative out there, and then a CCAC representative. It is probably a good idea just to have one committee member there if there are conversations going on. But just really just an outreach. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've gotten from our equity office and a lot of other people is that, it's limited for how we are reaching out right now in our communication. We don't meet in person. We can't do that. You have to be following the county's website or on their advisory board list or on the email distribution list, or have heard about it through these other groups. We're expanding, but one of the best ways to do that is to get out of this digital area and format and go into the public. And so I think that that's really just a tabling event. Hanging out there, and then when people come up and say, what is the CCAC? Who are you? What are you doing? And why are you getting involved? That's it. That's that event.
Yeah, so it's a two-way streak. I think we give out information, and then we can also collect information for contacts.
Yeah, I agree with you, John, about using the opportunity to make contacts with the community and listen to what, you know, the community wants to say to us. So with those, so there's two events, there's SLAG, and then Lily, there's the Arbor Day. I think that if we actually want to show up, can you all one of you create essentially a sign-up sheet that lists the days and the times for these events, and then send it out, and then folks for CCAC, we can take a look at it and then email you back our availability. I mean, we could even do it as, I guess we're not allowed to do Google Drive. There are, to avoid overlapping, but yeah, probably, I guess an email is not the most, but the most allowable way of doing that. But can we get,
About
can we
a
get
doodle
sign up?
poll?
Doodle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's only a one-way communication. That's allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Stacy and Heather and I volunteered to coordinate that.
Okay, awesome. Because I would like to be able to see these the opportunities in kind of in one place, so that we can look at that and kind of see what's coming up and plan for it to be able to be available.
Yeah, and any other events that you all identify, you see, you know, that you hear of going forward, keep the that stream of events coming, because then we can just keep getting them on the calendar.
All right, sounds good.
Let
All
me add one thing also. It's similar in the communication. It would be nice also if we maybe had a list of committee members that were a part of other groups. That would help too in terms of being able to have see how far reaching our committee members are, so that they can communicate to groups that they're also involved in.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Can you, I guess in that same email with the doodle poll, can you guys add that on? I mean, it's Heather or Lily, I guess maybe Heather will be like kind of the keeper of that, unless we can figure out some other way for us to do it ourselves, but we're probably just gonna have to email you.
Yeah.
All right, that's a great idea, John. Yeah, we already have a network, right? Or we have some of a network already. We just need to know what it is and how far it reaches. All right, well, surprise, surprise, our GRU liaison is not present with us today. No, let's see it. Okay, so on to item number 6, discussion of in-person meetings. Megan brought up a good point that we probably shouldn't be making any decisions right now, because we're going to have new committee members joining us, and their input on this matter is very important. So if we want to hold off on the discussion of whether we switch to in-person meetings or not, in the context of Delta basically, and where we are with COVID right now, Jennison brought up another item that is relevant to the meeting planning process, which is to, you know, what is our process for inviting and scheduling guests that we want to come speak with us. So I guess we'll go to, just for the sake of not repeating it, we'll table the in-person meeting discussion until next month. We'll have all of the new members join us by Zoom, and then we'll just hash it out all at once for the sake of ourselves. So process for inviting guests. Jennison, you mentioned you were going to try to get a couple of people to come, but just weren't quite sure. Yeah, you want to take it?
Yeah, I know we had discussed, extending the invitation for them to attend in September or October. And I guess I was just thinking long term, if they can attend in September, October, but, it would be nice to begin to create that calendar for all of our future meetings and, invitees, and kind of prioritize them and make sure someone on the committee is like the point person for communicating on behalf of the CCAC.
Forrest or Heather? Oh, John, you want to go ahead?
Real quick, is there a formal procedure that's already in place, Forrest or Heather, that when the public wants to speak with the committee, that is there a procedure that they register with?
It's not a registry or anything like that, but it follows the parliamentary rules of procedure. And it goes by a couple of different names, Robert's Rules. I think county went by Sturgis Rules for a while, but it's the chair runs the meeting. And if there is a person in the meeting that would like to be recognized, then that is at the chair's discretion as a part of the agenda. You all can ask if this person can be recognized, and then it's up to the chair. For speakers and for inviting speakers, the guidance that I would give is that you all should discuss it in the meetings or send an email to the liaisons giving information about the speaker and what what your intent is by inviting them and what their topic is. And then, you would vote on it, but I think we've gotten by okay with general head nods, especially for something like a speaker that is likely going to be mostly the one-way presentation type communication. So you would all give sort of a head nod that you're okay with that. And then at the chair's discretion, that speaker would be put on an agenda or scheduled in some way or another. Now, of course, the chair also has the discretion to say, hey, committee members, I trust all of you. We'll just let you guys invite speakers and they will show up, and the liaisons will schedule them.
I do trust you all to bring good people in, but I think the issue is more just organization. If 3 different committee members have this awesome person that they think is going to be really valuable for us to speak with, and they invite them for the same month, like if we don't have something like a calendar, or we don't have some sort of outline of topics or outline of speakers and their availability and sort of a preliminary schedule, then we're just going to end up, crossing the streams, which in Ghostbusters ended badly.
Yeah, and maybe it's as simple as creating just a Google Sheet in our shared resources where we can list speakers, who the contact person is or point person, what their topic is, whether they've been, be able to check off if they've been invited already to which meetings, you know what I mean? Just like Megan said, organizationally, it would be helpful for us to have that in our shared resources so that we can all see that in real time.
So how possible is that, folks who are allowed to use technology? Can we have a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, or a spreadsheet of some sort, such that it lists, the person's name, who initiated the contact, and then what months they have been invited for, so that we at least have an idea of, say, like Jennison's inviting folks for like September, October. It can be these people, September or October, and we can have that, to look at it. So if somebody else wants to invite someone, they'll know that September and October might actually be full. Let's look at November, or If someone has to be scheduled really far out, but we know we want to talk to them, we can put them down for like January, and then we know, okay, January, we're going to be doing this. Is that something you all could maintain?
This is normally where I would speak up, but it's not going to be me managing things. So, you know, I don't want to put the liaisons on the spot and say yes to something.
I mean, we could manage it ourselves, but we are not allowed to
No, we can-
touch.
that-
Oh, Megan. Oh, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead,
I mean,
Heather.
if it's as simple as creating a spreadsheet to put into a shared folder, we can certainly manage that.
My question was whether other committees have public calendars. So like that we could put on there publicly that so-and-so is coming to give a talk on X on our September whatever meeting, and the public may see that and say, oh, well, that's really more interesting than a normal CCA meeting, which is always thrilling. So I'd really like to go that day. So I don't know if it's worth having if that's something other committees do, is have an outward facing calendar.
Not to my knowledge on the county side, but that certainly, you know, would be something if we get the dashboard standing up, or a CCAC or Joint Policy Board webpage going. That would be something that would be easy and good to embed.
Megan, I saw in the chat you mentioned Sign Up Genius. How does that work? I'm not familiar with that one.
So I used to work with a kids museum that used it to schedule all of their volunteers, but there is a free level. I think we're probably small enough, small enough that we would fall under that. But it sets how many slots are available at specific times for events. People sign up for it, but then it sends reminders that, hey, Megan, don't forget you signed up to be there from 2 to 4 tomorrow. We'll see you then. That kind of stuff. And that way it's all automated. So nobody from the county or city has to send out daily reminders and things like that. So I haven't used it personally. I just worked with other organizations that really liked it.
That sounds like something we could potentially use, not just for speakers, but for events, you know, like you were talking about earlier.
That's what I had put it in there for, was when we were talking about events. Sorry, not for the speakers.
Work for speakers. All right. So how do we want to proceed on this? Jennison, you got any preferences?
Maybe we come back to it once we have our new committee, come back to it in September, and just, you know, and I mean, if it's as simple as creating a spreadsheet for now that we can access in the Google Drive, and Heather, you're able to do that. It doesn't need to be complex, I don't think. But, and I could get started by filling it in with Mary Ann Schmink and Kwanda Jha with their availability.
That sounds great. Thank you. And then if you send it to Heather, and then Heather, once you have that, if you can send out the link to the rest of us, just so we know where it lives and are able to check it. All right. So any other conversation related to meetings? Does anybody have any other thoughts to add or issues you want to bring up while we're on the topic of how we conduct meetings? Nope. All right. That brings us to the elephant in the room tonight, which is item number 6, GRU's response to our questions. And as I noted earlier, we do not have a GRU representative with us tonight, so we are just going to be talking to ourselves. But I do think that, I mean, I certainly have some strong opinions on this. I think there's some really important issues that we need to discuss. because GRU's response and their approach to this whole process is going to constrain what we're able to do as a committee. So I am not going to tell Mike, I'm going to step back, and I'm going to let other people go first. I know, Stephen, you talked a little bit about this at the beginning. If there's anything that you wanted to add, I was going to offer the floor to you first, since you've obviously put quite a bit of thought into this, and then I was going to let the conversation kind of go organically from there.
Yes, I just add that to the extent that the GRU has a set policy that's pretty much immutable, and I just don't see us changing that. We don't have the leverage, we don't have the authority, we don't have anybody who does have the leverage and authority that would be able to do that, unless you know something I don't. As I said before, I really think we should walk away from it, and we should spend our time on the many other aspects of mitigation. We can promote solar and storage at a neighborhood level, and grid management through our own efforts and in the reports that we make. And so whether or not GRU chooses to adopt those things is pretty unlikely that they would, but there are ways for GRU to move forward. I think what's going on with the general manager is that he's well-intentioned, but he's focused entirely on a very narrow definition of how to move forward, what the choices could be. Florida is moving aggressively toward solar with storage. I agree that GRU as a public utility for a municipality probably doesn't have the capacity to implement that anytime soon in a centralized fashion, but it does have the ability to start building out that capacity by neighborhoods. And that's what other places have done, is they've, when constrained by the history and the finances of that history, they have built out by neighborhoods, or they have at least begun the process. The other thing that I think is absolutely crucial to understand is that methane, and I choose not to call it natural gas, I prefer to call it fossil gas or methane directly. It's important to realize that we absolutely have to get off of that. It'll be a huge embarrassment to a progressive community like Gainesville for us to continue to use that. So the only thing I think we can do is state our policy perspective. But in terms of actually forcing or even insisting, I don't think we should spend any effort or energy doing that. There are many other aspects of mitigation that we can invest in. We can invest in the weatherization. Community weatherization project is a huge step forward in terms of weatherization. We also need to look at equity issues in terms of East Gainesville and how power is supplied to East Gainesville and well, across the entire region, actually. There are many issues that relate to mitigation that have to do with the other municipalities that are going to be challenging discussions for us to have. But they are potentially discussions that could lead to something productive. I don't think having a discussion with GRU is going to lead to anything productive. So I would encourage us to put something down in black and white as to what we think an appropriate mitigation based on solid engineering and finance, and I'm prepared to come forward with that, could be for GRU and how they could move forward. But other than that, I think making the case is all we can do. Anyway, I hope I didn't go on too long, and so, thanks.
Not at all. Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else have thoughts on this?
I want to.
John, Jennison, and Mike in that order. Sorry, John.
Okay. really fast. I won't take very long either, but I speak in favor of what the approach that Stephen has mentioned. After spending 35 years working with a utility company, I do understand and I know the power of big planning. And I think that GRU has a big picture plan that does not incorporate solar as a main factor. After reading the GRU report, I can understand that they are paralleling natural gas and solar together, and that they see natural gas as the means to have solar rather than storage or battery. And I do know what other utilities are doing, and they do have a different approach. So there are other options, but I do think that their GRU's big picture is to pair natural gas and whatever solar they use together. So I concur with you, Stephen. I think that we could do some mitigation and be more productive in looking at other ways to mitigate, and including weatherization and demand side management in our neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, John. Jennison?
Yeah, I'm really torn on this one because I feel like we have no choice but we have to address mitigation and adaptation, I guess. So, but I agree and completely understand, John and Stephen, your comments that, it could be counterproductive, in fact, pushing for movement to a centralized, more centralized solar. But I think that there is oh boy, hold on a sec. Sorry about that. I was going to take this meeting from the office tonight. I probably should have done that. But I think there is an sort of common, there's a middle ground. Some of the work I've been involved with in the last few months has been, I've learned a lot about what's evolved in the finance sector for distributed generation of solar in new construction specifically, and that to make it work, it's got to align the incentives, of course, with the local utility. So one we're working with is municipal Orlando Utilities Commission. They also have, their net zero goals. And so I think that there are opportunities, and from the data I've seen and the market and the movement that builders are taking in Florida already in new communities, it's possible to do this in a way where the utility incentives align with the builder incentives and the new home buyer incentives. Having said that, I would agree that the first priority or the top priority should be on existing communities and addressing equity in Gainesville and demand side management. So, and I have a speaker in mind we could invite to speak to the finance model and the kind of the value proposition from these different players on how this has worked successfully in communities at a smaller scale with distributed generation in new communities in Florida. So I guess I just don't want to take it completely off the table as the possibility that we could try to promote that smaller scale distributed solar generation in a way that is equitable and feasible economically.
Thank you, Jennison. I think what you're saying about distributed or smaller scale or neighborhood scale solar, it aligns with what I heard from from Stephen and from John. So I think you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that is a point of agreement. Okay, I saw Mike, and then Hannah, I see your hand is up too. So Mike, if you're there, please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to add much, and I certainly don't want to intrude on the commission's discussion as staff, but I would just say that Stephen's probably right, that pursuing solar very hard with GRU right now may not be productive. The way I read the manager's letter, to me, there was maybe this is informed by other stuff I've read, but I think he's more concerned that GRU drowning in debt and that solar is not going to be a priority for GRU until they are allowed to consider other things besides the extraordinary amount of debt they have. And I think he wants to keep the utility from going under or being sold and that sort of thing. I'm not necessarily trying to defend him, but just to me, that was a subtext I read into the letter. With regard to distributed solar and some other ideas, the county committee, and I think said a little bit about this, and Heather too, but the county commission have to bring back to them sort of a comprehensive look at all their solar, what we have in the comprehensive plan, what we have in the land development code, the other places where we have solar, to help them get a clear of what we allow now. And I think we're also going to bring for to add. For example, whether or not distributed solar is feasible in our community, we can still bring back to them is to allow it in advance of it being feasible, so that when it is feasible, we're talking about a simple permit process rather than let's do something brand new. Let's find a piece of land and go do it on. We can figure out how to squeeze it in the neighborhoods. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we'll bring to the commission things that they can do now and let our community or our energy demand catch up to those things, so that when they are allowed, simple, straightforward, and rapidly
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the perspective. Hannah, go ahead, please.
Hey, yeah, thank you. I just want to say, I mean, I'm not, I wasn't surprised by Ed's comments based on everything I know about you. I work at GRU, been watching them for years and years. And I mean, I think that we've seen this like across the fossil fuel industry and with utilities and local utilities and utility. Things like this don't really start to change until there's this sort of sustained pressure from local citizens, activists, whatever. I never really had a lot of, very honest, that GRU could just be rationally talked into considering more solar. And obviously it's true that they do have a lot of other concerns, among those, the financial problems, the debt thing. I understand that. But I don't really see it as the job of the CCAC to convince GRU, in some capacity. Again, I do think the UAB does a really good job with them. But I would say that kind of, I would tend to Stephen's comments. I don't think that the CCAC should really continue to invest too much energy in this kind of realm, but at the same time, not kind of let these systems around energy supply kind of be, left at this, at this. So there's so much we can do around education and discussions, because Ed is presenting a very singular narrative of what is possible, right? And I think that needs to be countered, by us and by other people in the community who also have a lot of knowledge, right? Because just, it was frustrating to read those words to us, because there was just so much, I felt like there was a lot of disdain and like commitment in those words. I mean, maybe that was just me, but, I felt like we were kind of talked down to. And, I appreciated that if that a lot of citizens in the community got when trying to learn about GRU and its energy supply sources, et cetera. So yeah, I think that was pretty much my comments there. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't think you're the only one who read it. We were pretty explicitly told down, shut up, and whatever ride they aimed to give us. So the dismissal and disdain, we weren't reading too far between the lines to do that. Amanda, please go ahead. Oh, and I see,
No,
jump in after Amanda. Or here?
go, Amanda.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, so I felt a lot of the same with Hannah. So I just wanted to share, you guys probably know this, but Race to Zero campaign, and I know you guys have, Forrest shared a webinar, and I am not an expert on it. You guys probably all know it more than me, but there are a few community members when I'm on other committees with them, and I know that they've taken that to the city commissioners and that they're going to bring it up. Was it at one of their meetings or soon? So I don't know how that fits into all of this or our committee, or but I just want to bring that up. There are community members that bringing that up again. You know, it's happening in Orlando, St. Pete, and I think it's supposed to be, you know, a rally to get more communities on board. But like I said, you guys probably know more than that. But I do know that it was brought up with a city commissioner recently. The commissioner's going to bring it up to, I think, our policy meeting soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. John, you want to jump in?
Yes, I just say what we need to be very cognizant of and very careful is that we don't want natural gas to be our fossil gas to be a competitor to. And that's what I'm kind of seeing. The other thing in the GRU thing, I've been working with some other utilities, some larger utilities, and I did understand from the letter from our GRU manager that GRU is not in the business of being a forefronter. Maybe some other utilities are, but there are utilities that have made natural gas and a battery storage equal financially. They can actually cost the same for them using natural gas as it is for using battery. So the technology is there. And I see with GRU is that they have invested so much going toward the natural gas path that financially it wouldn't be the same for them. It wouldn't be the same that they could get battery storage and make it equal to natural gas in terms of as a backup solar. So there are some utilities now that have invested enough into battery storage that they can, the cost of using battery storage is the same cost as using natural gas. So it can be done. I think GRU has gone down a path that might not do it right now, but it can be done, and it is being done out there.
John, are there like papers or sources that you could share about that? I mean, it sounds like he's leaning away from trying to push on GRU, but I know that I personally and probably other folks would just want to be informed about that, because that's the first I've heard about that cost. I'd really like to learn more.
Just conversation, it is Florida Power and Light that has done that, and they have enough battery storage and invested in that technology. But I will see if they publish something that would, and again, it has to do with that particular culture or that particular utility, how it's set up. that it wouldn't be the same for GRU.
Yeah, they've definitely locked themselves in pretty firmly to the gas path. Jennison, I thought I saw your hand up.
Oh, I just briefly, Don's comments reminded me of, I think that's the reality of like the investor-owned utility versus municipally owned utility. The challenges are very different, but we also have external factors, from the state pushing that natural gas bans utilities. So it's a real, constraint thing. But the one factor that could change rapidly is, of course, the volatility of the natural gas cost in the market. We import all of our natural gas, so that's I'll find the most recent data on that, but it's definitely become much more volatile in the last few years.
Thank you, Jennison. Is there anybody else with thoughts on this one? Yeah, of course.
I would just add, specific arguments aside, I would guide, keep the conduit open, keep the communication open. I'm impressed that there was a response that was so thorough, and to have the general manager respond to an advisory committee, I think is a testament that to you all can do things. You at least can get information communicated to very high levels. And, Robert was able to get answers to questions where I was not able to. So don't shut down or get rid of assets that you all have, and keep using them. And I think that there's value there. I'll just add that.
Thank you, Forrest. If anyone else has something to say, my 2 cents are that I had a lot of problems with that response, but I think the biggest one was the attitude. I think that we all would have been really sympathetic if the response had been, we want to plan for solar. Our near-term plans, we are financially constrained. We know that we're not going to be able to do anything big in the next 10 years. We are entering these types of technologies and these types of trends for the potential of implementing it, these potential constraints. If it had been anything along those lines of like, listen, we recognize that net zero 2045 goal is real, the intent to meet it. These are our current constraints. These are our challenges. We would like to dialogue with you about how to solve. We had a very different reaction, even if the content had been largely the same about can't do solar for this reason, and PPAs are hard because we didn't talk to people where we wanted to build them and that sort of thing. My main problem with it was the attitude of dismissal, and like we didn't even have the right to be asking the questions and nothing. And so this discounting of any approach or prioritization other than business as usual, that nothing else will be considered. That's where I have a problem with this. And so I see Megan Ennis has her hand up. I'm gonna jump in before I this rant. I actually did have kind of a suggestion I wanted to run by the committee, but I'm going to hold that. So Megan, please jump in.
I'm going to read Bob's from the Q&A, asking whether the CCAC can go on record with the policy we think GRU should pursue, and then let us be responsible for what actually happened. Throwing out that Bob had a question. So Carrie, your rant, unless to answer Bob's question.
Does anyone move in on that? I mean, it's a very valid question.
I wonder if that's a question for one of our liaisons. I don't go on the record about stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an option to you all. That's really your power, and that's what you've been asked to do, is to give that advice. So you have, if you all believe you've pursued an avenue to where you've gotten as much information as either you're comfortable with or you think that you're able to get, then you move forward with the advice that you all have been asked to give the commissions. And so, hearing you all, you sound like you feel like you've gotten all of the answers that you're going to get from GRU on solar, on these policies. And so I think it sounds like you all feel, at least for the way that you feel about GRU's input into this, that you're covered, that you have pursued that. And so now if you're comfortable giving that policy advice, then that's what you do. You all are you discuss it, and the chair will moderate it. And when you get to a point where either you have a statement that you would like to send to the joint policy board, or a letter, something to that effect, that would be the next step to get it on the record.
Thanks. I appreciate knowing the process. I don't think that we have come to a set of conclusions about things that we want to dictate, about what GRU would do. I mean, my problem, like I said, is not the content as it is about the approach and just the dismissal. So where I was going to take this was, I understand Stephen and John's position about, not banging our head against this wall or holding out this methane windmill. But I have a problem with washing and hypocrisy. And like, we have this net zero 2045 goal on the books, and we're not going to meet that with our youth active participation and assistance. And so what I wanted to toss out to the committee and get your thoughts on this is that we have the opportunity to update the joint policy board in August. How do you feel about coming up with some sort of summary to offer them? And kind of my take home message is that I think that either we need to, if we are going to just let GRU drive the car, and as edited, we're going to just buy it and enjoy the ride, then to suggest that we officially abandon the 2045 zero goal. Get there, and we can make a more general goal if we want, or if we want to actually keep the 2045 goal. I think that the joint policy board, and really their respective commissions that comprise it, need to step up in terms of exerting pressure on you to come back into the dialogue. I feel like based on that response, they're not interested in dialoguing with us. And that dialogue is not us telling them what to do. That dialogue is us listening to what their constraints are and seeing if we can work with them to come up with solutions. And it doesn't, from the tone of that response, I didn't get the impression that they were even willing to do that. So I would love to hear other suggestions or feedback on this. Yeah, Jennison.
I would just second that and say, especially given BCC's new report, the timing right now, it is part of our responsibility to communicate that to the broader public who commissioners are serving, and the urgency, essentially document that reality of what we're facing and what could get us, I mean, I think that personally, I think that's within the purview of our committee, and right now time to do it. And maybe for a discussion specifically about, the latest report and how that affects local opportunities and the urge and what we need to do in the community to be able to address it. Documenting it would be a helpful exercise, and then to get the education of the community, better community out there, a second critical piece.
Thank you, Jennison. Stephen?
Yeah, I was going to say that, that we really should proceed to write up our recommendation. And it sounds like there's some engineering and financial aspects that both Jemison and John brought forward that I think would contribute tremendously to the recommendations in terms of what is possible neighborhood development of solar with potential for storage and grid management. But I do want to address the tone of the letter. I agree, it was dismissive and it brooked no response part. They simply don't. I don't see it as a positive thing that the general manager responded to us. I think a response was essentially mandated at this point, and wanted to make sure that we were told to stay in our lane and not get involved in anything that they were doing. And he made that clear. The point to make about that is that that tone and that attitude from the general manager has been in place now for many years, to my knowledge. It's been there for a long time. And so it came as no surprise to me. The only thing I would suggest is that if we really want to complain about that once, we need some vehicle to the county city commission to let them know that we're happy with the response that was made, and that, as Megan pointed out, Megan Walker, I totally agree. If he'd come to us, and this is several other responses and interactions I've had with him in the years past, if he'd come and said, you know, we really can't do that, and here's why our hands are tied, and we're just screwed by that terrible contract that we had with the biomass plant, and it's a yoke around the neck, and we're doing the best we can and try and understand. You know, I mean, if that were the tone, I'd go, yeah, man. You know, the good news is, like I said, I've discovered the engineering on that biomass plant is really very, very good. And that's something I didn't know, and I think that's the sort of PR piece that GRU could be rolling out in its favor, to say, you know, we care deeply about the 2045 commitment and the race to zero when we get there. Here is what's holding us back. You know, we're looking for constructive suggestions and ways forward. But that has not been the tone or the attitude from this general manager several years. And all I can say is that if we're going to complain about it, we need to send a very loud and clear message to the city commission, because that's who GRU reports to, I think. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, that's I would say is I don't think it was a positive sign that he responded to us. I think it was, at this point in the discussion, it was almost required. And I think he was just sort of swatting us and saying, get in your lane, people. You know, we're in charge here. But anyway, and secondly, this is not a new response from the general manager. That's been ongoing for several years. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else? What do you think about taking it to the joint policy board? So to Stephen's point about how we get it to the commission, the joint policy commissioners and county commissioners meeting together. So that our most direct route, short of trying to actually get on the agenda for a specific city commission meeting. I was a little hot after reading that response, and I don't act while being kind of riled up. So that August 30th meeting is kind of coming up. What do we think about whether we want to take this to the commission, either commission, the joint policy board, or the city commission? And if we do want to take it to them, kind of how and when? Or do we want to, I mean, kind of, I think to Stephen and maybe it was John's point about putting, like actually putting together recommendations, because the other option would be to sit on it, not do anything right away, actually do our own research in terms of what the feasibility and some of the options are, and then go to the commission and say, you is not willing to consider these options. This is our research. We think that these are possibilities. And, you know, we think that you all should know this from us. And this needs to be part of the conversation with GRU. They don't seem to be willing to have that conversation with us.
I just want to add one thing here. I think that that's a good thing, Megan, to come up with other recommendations. Our problem with that would be to the financial impact of doing those things. The interfacing of these things depending on the way that they're going down the road right now. So that letter had to do with more about how do I keep GRU financially stable? And so that's my objective. That was the objective of that approach, was to keep GRU financially stable without raising rates for its customers. And at the same time, the other was to have the required backup generation, a backup reserve that it needs to have. So that wasn't about how to make GRU, you know, basically green or zero generation within a certain generation in a certain time. It wasn't about the 2045 goal. So yes, we can give recommendations on what we can do. It's very hard to talk about it in terms of how do you do it in a financially feasible way for GRU. We can ask them to study it and come with the cost of doing it.
I agree, John, and I totally understand, and I agree that like that those financial constraints and the sort of reliability regulations are the main thrust of their concerns and like what they're taking into account in terms of how they operate. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess is there value in us trying to make suggestions about potential technologies, given that we don't fully understand their financial situation? And I don't think that we will. Like, I don't think that they are interested in dialoguing with us with like the financial books open. You're the expert. I mean, in terms of how utilities operate.
The interface to go from where they are to what we would propose would be a study that would have to be done, and that study probably wouldn't be a real financial study. They had some options of building the Deerhaven are working and working in a and it was mentioned in the letter, are working with other utilities to come up with buying green power. And they decided, all of that didn't work out financially for them. So they decided to go down this path. So once you make that commitment, you almost got to follow it through. And what I see is if they do solar, it's all about backing it up with natural gas versus going down another path of battery backup. And they have the natural gas there already. So if we made a recommendation of use storage rather than using the natural gas, it cost effectively, it wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Steven.
Just a real quick question. Why can't we? I mean, obviously, Florida politically is not going to go in the direction we'd like to go, but the marketplace is. We may not agree with the choices that the marketplace is making in terms of equitability and other aspects like that, but it's very that big ticket storage and solar is the direction that NextGen and other big entities are moving toward aggressively. So why don't we just sell it?
Would you buy it with all the debt? And we just talked about all those constraints that they're under. Like that's kind of like trying to sell a house and being like, by the way, there's a giant sinkhole under it. But
yeah. Well, maybe you're right, but I don't know enough about utility finance, especially when it comes to investor-owned utilities. You know, I don't trust investor-owned utilities. I'll say that very loud and clear. But on the other hand, GRU seems to be in a box that it can't see its way out of. So I agree that using natural gas for the backup for solar makes a lot of sense, but there's a bunch of other stuff that wasn't mentioned in his response. And one of those things is sophisticated grid management, which there's all kinds of literature out there on that now. And the other is demand side management, which needs to be fully developed. And there's no reason why a community like Gainesville cannot engage in demand side management very aggressively. So anyway, I just wanted to raise that possibility that maybe discretion is the better part of valor, and let's just sell the sucker if we can. I don't know if we can. It's probably a lemon.
Thanks, Steven. Anybody else? Yeah, that's well, I guess a real simple question. Should I say anything at the joint policy board meeting? Oh, Forrest, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was just going to say, protocol or next steps would be, yes, go to the policy board. I would suggest, since they are your governing body, that you start with them. That can be either at this August 30th meeting, or they meet every 2 months. So you'd have to wait if you wanted to wait. Or of course you can send a letter that to the joint policy board, and it doesn't have to be specifically in that meeting. What you can also do after talking to that joint policy board is send a letter or schedule time to go to the individual commissions, the county and the city commission, to to spread the word. Basically, those are your options. As far as where do you go next with your recommendations for this policy for dealing with GRU? I think once you do bring that up at the joint policy board or at the commission meetings, well, now you have set the table where, just like with these questions, they're going to be required to answer. They will have to answer in a public meeting the questions that you put before the commissioners. And if you put your letter or your materials or what have you together in such a way that sets up these very specific questions, or even admits, your gaps in knowledge, your understanding about the finances and financials behind GRU, well, now, you've told the commissioners where that gap in knowledge is, and they will either request that of GRU or get an outside study, a consultant, or something along those lines. And you could even incorporate that into your recommendations, that if the answers aren't satisfactory, then you recommend reaching an outside consultant or outside information in some way or another that will further inform the commissions. And that is where then you as the CCAC have done really what you've been asked to do. You've collected the information that you could, and you've provided the recommendations that you can based off of the information that you were able to get.
Thank you, Forrest. What do y'all think about those options?
I agree. I think that that's all we can do.
Well, do you think that we should, do you think that, I mean, I guess it's Forrest and I, although if any of you want to come and speak up, I guess you're welcome to, it doesn't have to be me. But should the CCAC bring this up at this August meeting, or do we think it's wiser to take another 2 months and put together something that's a bit more crafted? I mean, to Forrest's point about having specific questions. I don't know that I have specific questions for them. I mean, my issue here is not that they did. They failed to answer most of the questions, actually. But I think the broader problem is that they're not willing to play ball with us. Like, it was a very antagonistic response, and I don't think that any of us here want to be antagonistic. Like, we understand that they are constrained. We just want to talk to them, you know? Like, are they even thinking about, are they taking 2045 seriously? It sounds like the answer is no. Like, would they want to? Like, would they even, like, let us in? Like, let us understand what their constraints are and how we might be able to meet it. Or if it's flatly impossible, we need to know that too. Jennison?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think at a minimum in this month at the meeting, communicating what we've discussed in a nutshell this evening, and that we as a committee are trying to move in a diplomatic and fair way forward, and kind of just inform the joint policy board of what our intent is to not, to evaluate these options and put the recommendations on the table, with the expertise that we do have and the access to information that we do have. Like, that's our job. So maybe just making them aware of what our planned strategy, and I think it would be premature to try to present any recommendations, because we can't do that together by August 30th. Yeah. So just to keep the lines of communication open, I think it's important to address it.
So instead of telling them, how do you feel about asking them? So this is what GRU told us. This is the response we got. It was very much a shutting down. The tone of the response was very much like that we're not part of the conversation, and that 2045 does not seem to be something that they are actively planning for in any way, and that part of what we were tasked with is to do this climate action plan. There is this 2045 net zero goal on the table, and just to say we are a volunteer citizen advisory committee. Without GRU's active participation, net zero 2045 is not going to be possible. How would you like us to proceed? Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a very diplomatic way to frame it. And yes, like, put the ball in their court to provide that guidance, or kind of sign off on how we would like to proceed. Yeah. Invite their ideas to proceed in a diplomatic fashion.
Yes, it would be really nice if they showed up to our meetings as well.
Yeah. I like that approach. I think what we have to do is we have to get the commission to understand, and the GRU to say that 2045 45 is not a realistic goal. And we need to let the commission know that we cannot get to that goal without you. And let that be understanding. I don't think it is right now. Once we put that as a premise, we can then set another realistic goal.
I agree. Is that? All right, so is that, are we good with that? Basically, take that approach of basically what John said, that we can't get to net zero 2045 without GRU. This is what GRU offered us. This is their current approach. How would you like to proceed? Like, are we going to revise the goal, or are we gonna, or is the commission gonna push it? All right. Any other thoughts on this before we move on? No? All right, another important question is if we completely overshot our normal hour mark bio break. We'd like to take 5 minutes now. We have a few more things on the agenda. We have the climate action plan, vision statement, communications framing practice, and then kind of what other items we want to bring up to the joint policy board on that end of the month update. So are y'all feeling pretty good? Have you like snuck off for your breaks and want to keep going, or would you like to take 5? 5, forced to saying 5. All right, let's take 5. We'll be back here at 7:38. All right, we're almost all back, but for the sake of time, let's go ahead and pick this back up. Our next agenda item is the Climate Action Plan Vision Statement. Who's spearheading that one? Forrest, you're muted.
Classic. So I can show what we discussed in the county staff meeting, and I'm not 100% sure what the transition was from last meeting to county staff to what we would be today. But I have that language that we were working with as county staff, and I can share my screen.
Sounds good.
All right, that should be up now. So I think the discussion got to where there was no need for a mission statement, but to just stick it with a vision statement. And so we have this language is what we ended up as. Yeah, it's where we are. Any ads? Did we miss anything? You know, if it's me, I like semicolons, you know, lots and lots of clauses. I want to make sure, you know, by the end of the sentence, you're not sure what you were reading. Looks good.
All right, well, silence is consent, right?
All right. Heather, you and Stacy nailed it.
Forrest, if you do need semicolons or other odds and ends as far as punctuation, we can get Ken on the committee. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do some consultant work. No, really, we need Hemingway should write all of our land development code and things like that.
What's the maximum sentence length? It's like 150 words or something like that. Yeah. All right, well, that one went quickly. We have communications framing practice. I am assuming this agenda item was discussed last month when I was not here. So if somebody, Megan, Ennis, maybe you could speak to this one.
Yeah, so we had talked about trying to take one of the sections, one of the topics from our climate action plan as it stands and try to do some test framing on it. However, given the lateness of the hour, I'm not sure we want to spend the amount of time it would take to adequately do that. So I am happy to help with that in the future. This is my last meeting on the committee, but I have put together a sort of a template to help think about putting messaging together that I will send to Heather to share out before the next meeting, and people can use it for practice either on their own time or in another meeting in the future.
Maybe
Okay.
you are one of the speakers.
Yeah, I can come back and do another talk. And I think Forrest did share out that if anyone is interested, we do have space left in our climate communication crash course that starts in September. And if multiple members of the CCAC sign up, you could probably argue for the 10% discount or whatever, because if you get 5 people to sign up, there's a discount. But it is really a wonderful training if anybody's interested in taking it. And I'm going to be giving a short talk on the topic to the county in September for a lunch and learn as well. So I will be around sharing that out. I just was hoping and excited to make room on the committee for some other people to bring in their expertise as well, which is why I opted not to renew my tenure. But I am still happy to assist with these types of communication strategies as you all move forward.
Thank you, Megan. So how do you all feel? I mean, well, this is also a question for you in terms of your availability, but as you know, sort of the climate action plan gets a little bit more meat on it, that, you know, we take each chapter and put it through this framing process while it's still in, you know, call it draft form, but really trying to figure out how we want to frame each individual chapter. Do you think that that's a beneficial thing to do and that might be a place to do this practice? Or do you think the practice makes more sense to do it kind of as a separate exercise earlier on?
No, I think as it is being put together, practicing the chapters will be helpful. And the like template I made is just to help everybody think as it's being written, you know, to start with the value. Every chapter needs to start with why this is important. Because if you don't start with that, nobody cares. And then it kind of has you think critically about the different pieces that were covered in the video I shared, to make you really put into consideration that you've covered all of those things and that you are ending with the constructive community level solutions that leave people with hope. And somewhere in the chat over there, I did share some new resources on coping with climate emotions that may be of interest for people as well. So that's free resources and it's in the chat there somewhere.
That's well timed for this week.
Yes, it was shared after the IPCC shared their new report. And, you know, even if you don't want to take the climate training, you can still join the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation. And it's a wonderful community of scientists and educators and researchers all engaged in hope-based climate messaging. So anyone is welcome to join the community, even if you haven't had the opportunity to participate in the training yet. So I'll drop the link for that in the chat again, just in case anybody's interested. But yes, so the little handout I have isn't super complex. It just has all the points to make sure that you're including each of those concepts in each chapter. And I think one of the ones that will need to be very clear are the explanatory chains and making sure that we are explicitly hitting every point between why this is important and what the issue is, and this is why these solutions work to address that issue. Because I think that's where, when we communicate with the public, we really fall down on the job, is we understand A to D, but there's all these pieces in the middle that the general public may not have the same access to that information we do. And if you leave it out, it can really sink you before you get started. So I will share it, and then I'm happy to come back and chat with people at another point when it seems to make sense. But since it's already 10 till 8, and I've already spoken more than I wanted to or meant to, but I'm happy to help with that as everybody moves forward.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for doing like Forrest and leaving officially, but not really. We are absolutely going to take you up on that offer of continued guidance and help. Yeah, John.
While Megan's here, Megan, how do we address the different segments that, you know, we talked about values, but what I see missing sometimes is breaking it into the segments, and the values differ from each segment. Where do we address looking at the segments and defining the segments?
And John, that is a great question, and not something that I've had to do a lot of work with before, because my messaging has always been targeted to a specific audience. So as you continue to refine what the action plan looks like and who the target audience is to read it, you may have different sections that, for our community members, you know, maybe you have a summary at the end of every chapter that is very outward facing and is like your elevator talk, or put it at the beginning, and it can be like the abstract summary of the chapter and in layman's terms, so that anybody can understand why it's important and why these things matter. And then you can get into the more detailed, county level audiences in the actual chapter itself. But I think you're right, John, that there's no way to write a chapter and have it meet the needs of every audience. And so I think you will continually be tailoring the information depending on who you're speaking with. And so, the information you take to a table at a church group is going to be different than going to talk to one of the other advisory boards. So sorry, I'm not sure if that was helpful.
No, it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else while we're on this topic, Forrest?
The question to throw at you, Megan, how effective or possible is it to do that multiple messaging strategy where you're hitting different segments with utterly different products? So maybe it isn't, the chapter in the climate action plan that speaks to summarizing things. The chapter is for the decision makers. Maybe it's a website or some other tool like that touches different tools for different segments.
Mm-hmm. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like a PDF flyer that summarizes in 5 sentences or less, each chapter that could be easily shared with the public, and that could be on the website as the outward facing. And if you really want to know more, then you can read our whole document or whatever. But I think that makes a lot of sense also, Forrest. And I think you'll just continually refine each of those products based on who you're trying to reach.
So start working on your 30-second radio ad on conservative talk radio.
Jenison.
Yeah, and a follow on to that, Megan, how would you recommend, or would you recommend that we structure the community conversations that we talked about last month and we've talked about in prior meetings, so that they're segmented and targeted to different community specifically, and structure them like more as listening sessions, Q&As, like how, do you have any words of wisdom to impart on that?
Well, I think, depending on what kind of community engagement you're doing, whether it's a presentation to a specific group and then doing a listening session, I think you could easily have a short 1-slide, 3-minute frame discussion of, how this is why we care, because this is our community and we want to protect it for the future. I mean, that's a value that is pretty universal across the board, and you could start there with almost anybody. And but depending on if you're planning to give multiple presentations, I would just make a PowerPoint template that has slides you can hide, and you put up this value slide when you're talking to these people, or just have multiple copies, that this is for people who really care about this thing, we use this set of slides, and for other people, you may not even need slides. And so the class I teach on this, my students, by the time they're done, I think it's about 1 paragraph, and it's more or less an elevator talk that they put together based on how would they communicate their research. And I suggest that you shoot for a 4th grade level, because that's pretty digestible by anybody you're going to talk to. And so yeah, I think having multiple resources that you can easily flip through, rather than having to recreate the wheel. Like when we do our trainings, it's the same information, we just have different PowerPoints depending on if it's a 20-minute intro or a 4-hour training versus our 7-week training. So
Any more brain picking of Megan before we lose her on our monthly basis?
Yeah, and feel free to email, have Heather or anyone email me with additional questions. Or I guess if I'm not on the committee anymore, you're allowed to email me yourself.
Yeah, we can talk to you.
Yes, so here's my email.
Yeah.
So feel free to contact me directly if you need anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. It's been wonderful having you and having you as a resource, and thank you for continuing to make yourself available to us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and thank you all for working with me, I guess. And I look forward to seeing where everything goes in the next months.
However long, yeah. All right. So circling back, we covered some of this with what we want to take to the Joint Policy Board, sort of with regards to GRU, framing it as a question, like here's where we are. 2045 is not doable without GRU's, sort of willing participation. Right now, it doesn't appear that they are interested in willingly participating. How would you like us to proceed? Some of the suggestions I had was to kind of update them with like actions to date, challenges to date, and then requests that we have from them. So the actions to date, I was going to mention the basically putting together that survey to try to get an inventory of existing climate-related initiatives across the city and the county. That we are putting together the discussion of solar barriers. We're going to be having that conversation in September, October, and that we're working on the communications plan and working towards community engagement and outreach based on sort of research validated methods. Are there any other actions today that you would like me to mention? Nope. Okay. So challenges that I had, one was, and I don't know how much they can do about this, but I think they need to be made aware, is the siloization, just that there's a lack of communication, coordination, and collaboration across jurisdictions and departments. And that's not the fault of staff. That's just the reality of the fact that this sort of project that reaches across jurisdictions and into all sorts of departments hasn't been done before. So those lines of communication are not necessarily well worn. And that's to make them aware. If they have any suggestions or advice about how to smooth that over, that would be great. But just to let them know that that's one of the challenges we're working with.
Feel free to be as clear and plain as you can. Lily and Heather and I won't take that as a personal, slight against us. I think it is important to tell them that's a problem in a very clear way.
Okay, because I don't want it to. Okay, that was honestly my main concern in softening the languages, because I don't want it to reflect badly on you all, because I know that you're doing the absolute best that you can, and we are grateful for everything that you're doing. But your job seems to be made harder by the fact that there are not these ready and available lines of communication. So it's okay to say that. That's not going to
absolutely
get anybody in trouble. Okay.
Communication across jurisdictions certainly is not something new to them,
okay.
But it's still important to say. And it's definitely important across the departments, because that's something that they will feel that they do have a lot more control over.
Okay. One thing that I had appear as a question mark, and I would like your all's input on staff, but also if CCAC members have any thoughts on this, was that another challenge is this lack of a single point of contact for us. And that goes to the siloization that, like, if we want a question answered, we need to go to county staff and city staff and then try to go to GRU staff as well, instead of just having a single point of contact who's sort of overseeing this, who has the connections and the authority to ask these questions and to get information. Is that a useful thing, a useful framing? I think it's true, but is it something that would be useful to say to the Joint Policy Board, or is that likely to have not to be understood the way that I intended?
I think it's useful and it is true, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that that's a recommendation from you all as an advisory committee, that that is a legit concern that all of us agree with. Really, Stephen made the point in his write-up that this would likely be a lot more effective if there was a central office with staff or some sort of more centralized approach to this. Yes, yeah, I agree as staff. Whether that's possible across jurisdictions and what that looks like is complicated. The answer to that, I will never say that it's not possible, because everything is, especially in governance. But I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it is something like a consultant that runs the project, but then of course you've got outside eyes and hands working on something that feels very local and very personal. But if it's that consultant and both jurisdictions pay equal, or all jurisdictions, we should not forget, somehow there's a pay structure or a balance so that everyone has a skin in the game. And then they work together to tell their staff and their management that we have skin in the game, this is important. That would be helpful. Again, I don't know exactly what that looks like. You all may be able to come up with that, provide the suggestions, have the conversation. Stephen has started it with what this could look like. Yes, I think having that one centralized place for you guys to go and then get information back from is ideal, but obviously there are limits to that as well, and whether or not that's possible, not sure.
Well, we don't know what's possible, but we can ask.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen. So Stephen, your email had some good information on that. If you have any other kind of thoughts on how to structure that, or what a specific request might look like, if you could, I guess we send it to Heather. If you could please, if you have any thoughts, send it to Heather and she can send it to me, in order to kind of, I think my plan will be to leave it fairly general, to say, siloization is a problem, is a challenge. It would be really useful to have a single point of contact. I don't know how much more detail I want to get into in the meeting, but I would really like to have backup information. So if they start asking questions, I have a response ready. And then that may be something that if we want to move forward with that as a suggestion, then as a committee, at a later meeting, we discuss what that really looks like. Okay, so the siloization, the lack of a single point of contact, these are the challenges. The fact that our GRU liaison is generally AWOL, and the GRU response to us, like we previously discussed. Those are going to be my sort of those four challenges to date. Requests from them were going to be was to request that they would consider or discuss with the relevant staff the benefits of, and I guess elected officials, the benefits of implementing some sort of single point of contact, to see if that's something that they're willing and able to move forward on. Be one of the request actions, and the second would be some sort of guidance on GRU. Either, are we revising the 2045 goal so that we're revising the goal that we're operating under? If they're not willing to push GRU, and not willing to try to get them to be an active participant with us, or something that's going to be kind of open, but to get their guidance on how we should proceed with GRU would be the second requested item. Any other thoughts on that? Is that okay with you all? Is there anything that you would want to add or change? No? All right. Cool. If that's it, then that's done with that piece, and we're on to public comment. So before we move on to public comment, if the committee you have anything to add before we open up to public comment, now would be the time. Amanda.
Yeah, I have one thing to add. Fairly recently, I wrote kind of an outline for a waste reduction section for the climate action plan. And overlapping is a lot of work I do with zero waste, and overlapping even more is work that is going on with the city that I've been invited to some meetings too, with rescuing food and food recovery. So I just wanted to open that up, that I'd like to discuss what I put forth for the bullets for that section for the climate action plan, and know that it's not comprehensive. Probably more can be added. I think that it's pretty comprehensive as far as waste reduction, but one of the bullets was a comprehensive organics program, which a lot of my points are with rescuing food and getting compostable organic material out of the landfill. But that comprehensive organics program, mostly what I deal with is waste reduction and rescuing food. But I think that there's a lot more to organics as far as, local agriculture and farming and whatnot. So I don't know how that will come out in the climate action plan, because that's not necessarily waste reduction, but that has to do with organics or food. So I just am bringing this up to maybe talk about it at some point. Although I did just find out today that the open house for one of my daughter's school is September 9th. So I'm not exactly sure if I will make that meeting or try and do both. The school said it might be virtual, and I don't have a time for that, that open house on September 9th. But I just wanted to bring that up and let you guys know that I was working on that just a little bit. It's not at all built out, but it's something.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think we'd definitely like to hear about that. I think so. We have, because solar is going to be either September or October. It sounds like September, maybe we don't want to plan for that just so that your schedule is open, but maybe October or November. Would that be a good timeline?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Forrest.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for working as a committee on one of the sections. And so if there's a group that is interested or focused on waste reduction and waste, then this is the opportunity, I think, for them to work together and give that feedback to staff, to have that incorporated in the outline in the draft. Also, if there are elements of that you all don't agree with staff, or staff doesn't agree with you, that is now also the time to have that conversation. So, when it comes up in a CCAC meeting to discuss each one of these components, each one of these sections or segments, that's sort of the idea. And I know I've said that a million times before, but I think that it's good to keep bringing up the planning process for that.
Thank you, Forrest. So, Amanda, Stephen, why don't you go first, and then I'll go.
I'm just going to point out that I sent a paper forward from the proceedings Academy. It's called A Framework for Localizing Global Climate Solutions and Their Carbon Reduction Potential. This is more an organizational type of document, but I really strongly recommend that everybody read it. It could help organize our thinking about how to move forward with mitigation and carbon reduction potential outside of the confines of the incredible constraints of GRU and the other things that we might be facing in general. So that paper's been sent forward, and I sent it to Forrest, and I'm sure it's part of the portfolio. But anyway, I think it's very simple and straightforward. There's a table that talks about all of the various components that very likely would end up in some form in our report. And You know, I also want to reiterate that I strongly agree with Hannah that having a carbon market activity that's based on biologicals is probably not reasonable. It's certainly subject to cheating, but that doesn't mean that we should not pay attention to our ecological resources and use them to whatever advantage we can to reduce emissions. So thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, so I read the paper and I completely agree. That's a really useful framework. I liked how they really looked at sort of the interconnection between solutions and how they could, either be additive in terms of producing a larger impact together, or where you might actually see one sort of offset the other. And as somebody who's not as well versed on the biological aspects of sequestration through agriculture or through forest management, it offered a nice perspective, sort of introductory perspective to that as well. So it was a pretty non-technical read and useful, I think. So I'll second what Stephen said there.
Just a nuts and bolts type thing. All of those are still stored and will continue to be at that same link. All of our resources that we've put together, they are being held so that we can make sure that we can reference them, obviously, when we do build this document and go back to them. And also we have a shared file system over on the county side now, where county staff have access to all of those resources and are sharing them back and forth. So all of us are building this together.
Wonderful. Thank you, Forrest. So is there anything, we got anything else before we open it up to the public? Nope. All right. Oh, Cayman. I see. Well, Hannah and then Cayman. Hannah.
Briefly say, I said at the beginning of the meeting, but just wanted to reiterate to those who weren't there. This is also my last meeting, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to say it's been an absolute pleasure to work with all of you. And I don't have, Megan's level of expertise per se, but if you ever wanted to use me in any capacity, always feel free to reach out. I'll add my email as well in the chat. And I'm hoping to stay on in some capacity and help with various things here and there with the CCAC. But at least you can now speak to me directly if you ever want to. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And thank you guys for everything.
Hannah, thank you so much. You say that you don't have necessarily the expertise, but your perspective has been so valuable and so refreshing. I'm speaking for myself, but I doubt I'm speaking only for myself. So I'm glad that you're willing to stay involved with us, because I think that we need you. We need your perspective. So thank you.
Thank you.
Also, your summaries have been awesome. And I don't know what we're going to do without getting your UAV summaries. We're all going to have to step up our game.
Completely agree. I can say that from staff side too. Yeah, just completely agree. And you don't have a choice. We're going to keep reaching out here.
That works for me. Thank you.
You're still on East Coast time, so it's good.
Exactly. Yeah, no big deal.
All right. All right. Cayman, I thought I saw your hand, but then it went down.
I didn't have anything to say, but I guess I'll say thank you to all the CCAC members that have been with us, are staying with us, and are leaving. But no, I did raise my hand.
Did raise it?
I did raise my hand. I don't think so.
Like a butt dial? Is it like a butt hand raise or whatever?
I don't know. It's a reflex. It was.
Okay. All right. You're off the hook. Thanks. I think we lost.
That's a really weird emoji. The hand butt dial.
I don't know. I mean, I've done it on a phone. I've done it. I don't know how you do it with a touch screen, but I've done it with a touch screen. All right. All right. So I think that we lost a couple of our attendees, but if any of our attendees want to speak, please raise your hand, and then Forrest will do whatever Zoom magic is necessary.
Yeah. Uh,
I think I see Bob's hand raised.
I see Bob, and he is allowed to talk now. Go for it, Bob. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And thanks everybody for all your work tonight. I agree that I think the relationship with GRU is got a lot to be desired. I know that I've had meetings with them over the years, and I even question sometimes whether your liaison with GRU even believes that humans have anything to do with climate change, given some of the comments he's made to me. But that was many years ago, and I hope that that's changed. But one thing I can say is that back when the city commission was considering adopting the policy of net zero emissions by 2045, that Ed Belarski multiple times in meetings said, oh, no problem. GRU has no problem with that. And then ever since then, it seems like whenever we're talking to GRU about how we're going to actually do it, they can only talk about all the reasons why we can't do that, or why it's impossible, or why, oh, it's going to be very difficult, or, oh, don't worry, we'll get there eventually. So I do think that it's important to start pinning down GRU on what is their plan to be, net zero by 2045. I know that even in one of their most recent submissions to, I guess it's the Public Service Commission, I forget, something about a plant, some kind of a plan, and I could get you the reference, but it was reviewed by an organization that gave GRU like a C- or something, because that plan showed that GRU would be burning more coal at the end of the 30-year period than they would be now or currently. And of course, the response, everybody was kind of shocked by that. And so we asked them, well, how do you explain that? I said, oh, don't worry, that was, we've revised that plan. But so I have to say that GRU does seem to say, oh yeah, no problem, no problem. But when you actually pin them down, they really don't have any real, I don't know if it's even a desire. Maybe it's just because, it's what they're used to doing. They're engineers. They've always done it that way. I don't know. But whenever we've talked to them, they do seem to want to just stress all the reasons why this can't ever happen. I know specifically with solar, they've said that this just is not realistic. And, whether they're not keeping up with the latest technology. Now, Ed makes some good points, that, well, we're not here to test out new technologies, and they have been burned on things in the past, but I'm not too sure that they've really embraced the idea that they really have to do this. That was my final comment to, I believe it's Mr. Brown, the Chief Operating Officer, but in any case, he kept saying, oh no, that's not going to happen. It's impossible. And I said, well, we're going to have to figure out a way to do it, because you're going to have to do it, And stranded assets don't just mean that, well, what do you do when the life cycle is over? It means you still have life in that system or that infrastructure, and you can't use it anymore because the natural gas is, outlawed or whatever it is, and the IPCC report that just came out just, strengthens all of those comments from me, that it's just something we're going to have to do. And to say all the reasons why you can't, and to say that, well, financially it'll undermine the stability of GRU is just totally missing the whole point. The financial stability of GRU isn't in very good shape when the environmental stability of the city of Gainesville or the state of Florida, the planet Earth is falling apart. So I'm not too sure these guys have really seen the light yet. And I don't know how you get them to see it, but I think we do need at least to see a plan from GRU that says, this is how we're going to do it. And if they don't have that, they have to start working on it, because they're continuing to spend money on things that aren't going to get you there. And that can't be a solution. But anyway, thank you. Good luck with the Joint Water Policy Committee. You've got your hands full, I have to tell you that. But yes, good luck. And thank you all very much for your work tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. It's always good to hear from you, and I appreciate your perspective. I also appreciate the historical insight about GRU's changing responses to the 2045 goal. That is definitely news to me, and Yeah, I appreciate it. Do we have, it doesn't look like anybody else has their hand raised. So with that, this is one more speak now or hold your peace. And if no one has anything to add, we'll wrap this one up. Nope, everybody wants to go home. Well, we are home. We want to go to bed. All right, with that, I will see. Oh, shoot. All right, we have suggested items for the next meeting. I was getting ahead of myself. First, how are we on the solar conversation? Is that not going to happen? Are you looking for suggestions from, no, my question is suggestions. Are you looking for suggestions from us for the next meeting, or are you just letting us know what is currently on the docket?
Yes to both of those. So if you all do have suggestions for contacts or other people, places that we should reach out to, please let us know. I think if and when you do, we'll incorporate that into our own contacts that we're working with as staff. And then, you know, since I'm not going to be here, I'm not going to make promises for other staff, but the staff should be able to come back with at least a progress update, if not some information about solar policies from different stakeholders, or yeah, policies is probably not the right word, but viewpoints and opinions and things like that from different stakeholders that will help you all get informed to provide that advice to the Joint Policy Board.
Thank you, Forrest. And I see, Amanda, I see that the cap waste component is on there as suggested. Can we keep you on there sort of provisionally? And if once you kind of know more about the open house, if it looks like that's not gonna work with your schedule, just let Heather know, and we'll take it off and we'll push it to like probably November. Hopefully we'll have the solar by October, but we'll push it back a month or so. But if you're able to be there on the 9th and to give us that information, then it looks like there'll be room. So
Okay, yeah. And how would you want me to share that? Because like I gave Forrest basically bullets. It's a few pages. And I think Forrest has shared it with the city and county staff. I should just show you guys what I've done, or?
yeah, that sounds good. I mean, if Forrest, can you pass, or Heather, I guess I keep giving you job like work, Forrest, but it's your off day. Can Heather, would you please share that document from Amanda? And then I guess we'll just read it ahead of time.
Okay.
And come to you with questions. But if you want to just be able, I don't know if you want to put together a PowerPoint, or if you just kind of want to walk us through kind of your thought process, and
Sure.
if there are any areas where you're looking for our feedback. Like you mentioned some of the organics, that was maybe something that needs a little bit more fleshing out. So if there are things that you think that we might be able to offer perspective with, or if you're looking for folks just kind of like stuff, be like, hey, I could do some other people to help me research this, that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
And if there's anybody else on the committee that wants to work on it, now is the time too.
Sounds good.
Maybe.
Yeah, Amanda, thank you. That's a big lift. So thank you for taking that on. You're definitely the right person to do it. I really appreciate you being generous with your time and pulling it off.
And it's been the first, and it is the model for the sections and the components for you all going forward. That's why I keep bringing that up. And so definitely thank you, Amanda, for taking really the lead and going out there first for the section that you're driving.
Yes, thank you. Seconded. All right. And look, if we don't have anything else, like virtual eye contact, it looks like we don't have anything else. All right. With that, thank you. Forrest, seriously?
Megan Ennis brought up a good point. Officer elections also, you may want to do that at the next meeting, but also if there are 3 new people, you may not want to hit them over the head with something like officers election first, but that's That's up to you, Chair. You all got hit first with officer elections, so.
We did, and that was disconcerting. Can we put that on like November so that like folks can, or October, I mean, like so folks can come in on September and we can get to know them and they can get to know us, and then we can be like, by the way, elections next month, just be thinking about it.
You're the chair.
All right, well, if there are no objections, that's my preference. is that we give everybody a month to think about it. Be like, this is coming. Some of you are probably going to get tapped, just so you know, Yeah. All right. We good? Yeah. All right. When you said Megan Innes, I'm like, Megan Innes does not like meetings to go long for us.
That's why I typed it. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, and goodbye for now. Briefly, au revoir to Megan and to
Good luck,
Hannah.
Hannah.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Thanks.
And we look forward to talking to you, like one-on-one as human beings, and to having you continue to be involved and being able to share your wisdom and your ideas and your perspectives with us.
Yeah.
And with that, we are
Good night.
Bye, and see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Stay
Thanks,
safe.
Bart.
Thanks, John.